Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're heading into, well, occult archives territory, but with a bit of a twist.
Yeah, usually we're dealing with grimoires and texts rumored to summon who knows what. This time, it's a different kind of hidden knowledge.
Right. We're cracking open the official monitor of the Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of Texas.
Hmm.
Rituals, ceremonies, and teachings of Texas Freemasonry.
A mouthful, but basically the rule book for Texas Masons. And it's from 1921, so we're getting a snapshot of their world almost a century ago.
Now, Freemasons, they have that mystique, right? Secret rituals, hidden meanings. This monitor doesn't detail demon summoning, but it lays out their lodge practices, the degrees they go through, the whole deal. It's like a peek behind the curtain of an organization that's fascinated people for ages.
And it wasn't just slapped together either. The book mentions it's based on a previous version, Taylor's Monitor, then revised by a brother E.E. Douglas and a whole committee. Talk about taking their rituals seriously.
They even name-check grand lecturers all the way back to 1837. Clearly, these guys value tradition.
The dedication itself is pretty telling. It's all about honoring those early craftsmen who built up Texas Masonry. You can feel that connection to the past.
Okay, so picture this. You're a new Mason walking into a lodge meeting for the first time. What happens? This monitor lays it all out, step by step.
Well, first you'd notice the order, the formality. Everyone's got their place, their role. The worshipful master, he's like the lodge's president, he calls the meeting to order with his gavel.
I'm imagining some serious gavel action.
You bet.
Yeah.
Then everyone puts on their jewels. These aren't diamonds and rubies, mind you. They're emblems showing your rank within the lodge. Then they all go to their designated stations. Except for one guy, the Tyler. He's outside, guarding the door.
The Tyler. Always sounds so mysterious, like a guardian of secrets.
Exactly. Security and privacy are paramount, no unwanted interruptions. So even before any business, there's this sense of ritual and structure.
So everyone's in place, the Tyler's keeping watch outside.
Wow.
What's next?
For a stated meeting, their regular gathering, the lodge is opened in the master's degree. Now, there are different degrees in Freemasonry, each with its own rituals and teachings. We'll dig into those later.
Okay, degrees noted.
What's crucial is that all business follows their bylaws, A&D, the Grand Lodge Constitution. And get this, both opening and closing involve prayer or a formal charge. They're really big on the ritualistic and moral side of things.
A prayer to start things off. Makes sense, setting the tone. What are we talking about here? Fire and brimstone stuff.
Not quite. It's more about invoking the great architect of the universe, asking for blessings on their work, guidance, wisdom, that kind of thing. And there's a specific one for the first degree, keeping their work peaceful and harmonious.
Great architect. I've always found that interesting. Not specifically Christian or any one religion, is it?
Exactly. It's inclusive, allowing for different beliefs within the lodge. After the prayer comes the charge at opening, reminding everyone to keep their desires in check, be good to others, and remember their duties to God, their fellow man, and themselves. Big on unity and peace within the lodge.
Harmony among the brethren. Makes sense, considering they're not supposed to bring in outside conflicts.
Right. And the charge at closing reminds them to keep practicing those Masonic values even after the meeting. Be diligent, make good choices, think before you speak, that kind of thing.
Sounds like practical advice for anyone, really.
And it goes further, urging them to do good unto all, not just fellow Masons. It's like a moral compass for their daily lives.
So carrying the lodge spirit into the world, that's something. The monitor's not shy about laying down the law for behavior during meetings either, right?
Absolutely. No side conversations, no forming committees without the master's okay, no interrupting, gotta show respect to the master and wardens,
Yeah.
and no personal grudges or talk about politics or religion. That's a big one.
Keeping things focused and preventing arguments, I suppose. Makes sense, given their emphasis on unity. But let's get into the degrees themselves. Where does a new Mason even begin?
It all starts with the entered apprentice. It's about moral lessons, lots of symbolism, and the Holy Bible is front and center.
Bible-thumping Masons. Never pictured that.
Well, they call it the great light in Masonry, the source of their faith and ethics. They even have a prayer for initiating new candidates, asking God to bless them and guide them towards holiness. It's about becoming a good man, a good brother.
So morality is a cornerstone, literally.
Right. And they emphasize unity, too, quoting psalms about brethren dwelling together. Sometimes they even sing Auld Lang Syne to drive that point home.
Auld Lang Syne with the Masons. Who knew? But what about the lambskin apron?
Ah, yes, the badge of a Mason. More than just an apron, it's an emblem of innocence. The monitor goes on and on about how it's more ancient and honorable than any award from a king or emperor, except, of course, from a fellow Mason.
So status symbols don't matter within the lodge. Everyone's equal, united by that apron.
Exactly. And then there are the working tools, each with its own meaning. The 24-inch gauge, it's not just for measuring. It's a reminder to divide your day. Time for God, time for work, and time for rest.
Time management, Masonic style.
Then there's the common gavel, the one the master uses. Well, it's also about chipping away your vices, getting rid of the excesses in life.
So even the tools have a deeper moral meaning. Fascinating how they weave it all together.
And the virtues for an entered apprentice. Purity of heart and good conduct. Basically, be a decent human being. The supports of a lodge are wisdom, strength, and beauty, which are pretty essential for any endeavor, whether it's literal building or building character. And the covering, that's the sky above, the clouded canopy, or the starry heavens. Pretty poetic, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And the lodge itself. It's not just a room, is it? Every piece of furniture has meaning.
You got it. The Bible, the square, and the compasses, those are the furniture. The Bible's for God's service, the square for the master, symbolizing morality, and the compasses are for all Masons, teaching them to keep their desires in check.
Makes you look at a compass differently, huh?
And then you have the ornaments. The mosaic pavement, showing the ups and downs of life, the blazing star for divine guidance, and the indented tassel, representing the good things surrounding our lives.
They really thought this through, huh? Even the lights and the jewels have meaning.
Yeah, so you have 3 lights, east, west, and south, symbolizing knowledge, notably none in the north. Then the jewels, immovable ones, are the square, level, and plumb, all about morality, equality, and uprightness.
Those are pretty solid principles.
Right. And the movable jewels. The rough ashlar, that's the unpolished newbie, the perfect ashlar, the morally perfected Mason, and the trestle board, representing life's plans, and the lodge itself, dedicated to either King Solomon for his wisdom or those 2 St. Johns for their virtue.
Okay, pop quiz. What are the fundamental tenets of Freemasonry?
Oh, I know this one. Brotherly love, relief, and truth. Brotherly love means treating everyone like family, helping each other out. Relief is all about charity, helping those in need. And truth, well, that's honesty, fairness, living a virtuous life.
They hit all the bases,
Hmm.
and they don't stop there. What about the manner of service and the great duties?
So the manner of service goes back to those classic virtues: temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Be moderate, be brave, make good decisions, be fair. Solid advice for any time period.
Can't argue with that.
And the great duties are threefold: to God, your neighbor, and yourself. Be reverent, be kind, and steer clear of vice. And of course, be a good citizen, obeying the law of the land. That's the entered apprentice in a nutshell.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. And that's just the first degree. What happens when you level up to a fellow craft?
The fellow craft. Things get a bit more cerebral here. It's about understanding the why behind the rituals, the symbolism. It's not just about doing, it's about knowing.
So it's like Masonry 2.0.
Exactly. They even bring in a new scripture from Amos talking about a plumb line and testing for uprightness. It connects to one of their key working tools, the plumb.
Always with the symbolism.
You know it. And they have a new ode for this degree, too, about craftsmanship, but with a deeper spiritual meaning.
So the music's evolving along with the degrees. Neat. But what about the tools? Do those change too?
Yep. The fellowcraft uses the plumb, the square, and the level. Plumb for living an upright life, the square for squaring your actions with morality, and the level for remembering we're all equal.
Each tool adding another layer of meaning. I like it.
Right. And it's here they make a distinction between operative and speculative masonry.
Wait, hold on. 2 types of Masons.
Think of operative masons as the original builders, the guys who actually constructed stuff.
Like brick and mortar, stone and chisel, the real deal.
Yep. Speculative masons are more about using those building metaphors for personal growth. It's building character, not buildings.
So it's about taking those practical skills and applying them to your inner self. Deep.
Right. Then they bring in the globes, the 5 orders of architecture, the 5 human senses, and the 7 liberal arts. Talk about a knowledge boost.
They're really covering a lot of ground here. What's the deal with the globes?
They're the terrestrial and celestial globes representing the earth and the heavens. It's about understanding our place in the universe, the big picture.
I'm sensing a theme here.
And those 5 orders of architecture, they're not just names. They go into the history, the styles, the symbolism. Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, composite. Each one's connected to ancient Greece, those master builders. It's like a mini art history lesson.
So it's not just about morals and symbols. It's about appreciating the craft, the artistry. And the five senses, the seven liberal arts, how do those fit in?
The senses are about how we learn and experience the world. Seeing, hearing, feeling, those are especially important to Masons. And the liberal arts. Grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, astronomy. They're all essential for a well-rounded education.
Geometry. It rings a bell.
Yeah, it's huge in Masonry. It's the basis of architecture, math, and they see it as a way to understand the divine order of the universe.
So it's not just practical, it's spiritual too.
Exactly. The fellow craft degree really expands your horizons. But then comes the big one, the Master Mason degree.
The final boss of Masonry. What's the ultimate goal here?
It's about bringing it all together. The Monitor calls it cementing the whole, binding men together with mystic ties and brotherly love. This is where they choose their leaders from.
So it's about leadership, about cementing the bonds.
Yep, and they take this degree seriously. It's where they preserve their ancient landmarks, the core principles of the order. All the important lodge business happens in a master's lodge. It's the top tier.
And the scripture for this one, got to be something epic.
It is. Ecclesiastes 12.1-7, all about aging, facing mortality, the spirit returning to its source. Heavy stuff. And sometimes they sing a hymn about it, too. Something about the passage of time set to Bonnie Doon.
Bonnie Doon, wasn't expecting that.
Right. But it fits the theme. It's about reflection, contemplating life and death.
Deep. And the Master Mason's main tool.
Well, they consider all the tools important by this point, but the trowel is the one they single out.
The trowel. What's so special about that?
Operatively, it's for spreading cement, binding stones together, but symbolically, it's the cement of brotherly love, uniting the fraternity.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
Right. The second section of this degree is all about ceremony. They reenact a legend, and it's supposed to be super impactful, really drive home the idea of resurrection and the immortality of the soul.
Sounds intense.
It is. It's about choosing integrity over letting your passions rule you. And they even have a funeral dirge set to Pleyel's hymn to really emphasize the mortality thing.
They're not messing around. And what's this prayer about God seeing everything, even our thoughts?
That's right before they raise the candidate to Master Mason. It's acknowledging that God's always watching, asking for protection and guidance, and ultimately for mercy.
A little bit of humility before the big promotion.
Exactly. And then there are a bunch of new symbols to learn about. 3 steps for youth, manhood, and old age.
Life's journey in a nutshell.
The pot of incense represents a pure heart. The beehive is about industry, working together, helping those in need. And the Book of Constitutions, well, that's got to be guarded by the Tyler sword, a reminder to be careful with your thoughts and actions.
No messing around with the rules. What else do they have in their symbolic toolbox?
The sword pointing to a naked heart, that's divine justice, no hiding your true intentions. And the all-seeing eye, of course, reminding you God's always watching. Then you have the anchor and the ark, symbols of hope and a well-lived life.
So they've got hope covered too.
Yep. And for the intellectual types, there's the 47th problem of Euclid, showing their love of knowledge, especially geometry. Then, of course, you've got the hourglass for time slipping away, and the scythe as a reminder of death.
Cheerful bunch, these Masons. But they're not all doom and gloom. What's this charge they give to the new Master Mason?
It's like their graduation speech, praising him for his progress, his commitment. Then they lay down the law. Be trustworthy, be honorable, be a good example, guide your brothers, protect them from temptation, and always do good in the world.
Sounds like a big responsibility.
It is, and they have these special addresses for different types of people joining, like for a clergyman talking about charity and doing good, for a soldier emphasizing the international brotherhood.
So Masonry transcends national boundaries.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right, and for a foreigner, reminding him to keep those Masonic bonds strong no matter where he goes. It's about a universal brotherhood.
It's really fascinating how they tailor these messages to different walks of life.
And then there's this recitation, Hope, where they really dive deep into what hope means to a Mason. It's about the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, and the promise of life after death. They call it a cheering melody, something to hold on to in tough times.
Hope as a guiding principle. Makes sense.
And it connects to that evergreen sprig they use, that symbol of immortality.
So they really pack a lot of meaning into their rituals. But what happens when we move beyond the individual lodge? What about the Grand Lodge, the big leagues?
Ah, the Grand Lodge. Their installation ceremonies are pretty formal. The Grand Master-elect is usually installed by the current or a past Grand Master. Then he installs the other officers. It's all about order and tradition.
Sounds like a big deal.
It is. The Grand Marshal presents the new Grand Master. They have a special prayer. He takes an oath, and then they give him the Grand Master's jewel. It's a symbol of his authority and his duty to uphold justice.
Symbols, symbols everywhere. And what about all those other Grand Lodge officers? What do they actually do?
They've got it all laid out. The deputy Grand Master steps in when the Grand Master's away. The Grand Wardens make sure everyone's behaving. The Grand Treasurer handles the money. The Grand Secretary takes care of the paperwork.
Sounds like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. They've got the Grand Chaplain for the spiritual stuff, the Grand Orator for the fancy speeches. The Grand Marshal organizes processions. The deacons act as messengers. The stewards help out.
They've got someone for everything.
And the Grand Pursuivant announces visitors. And of course, the Grand Purser guards the door. Each one gets a special jewel and a specific set of instructions. No room for confusion.
It's like a government in miniature. And the subordinate lodges, those local chapters, their installations must be a bit simpler, right?
Well, they follow a similar pattern, but it's the installing officer who runs the show. He asks the master-elect a bunch of questions, making sure he understands the rules and is willing to follow them. Then they go through all the symbolic items, like the holy writings, the square, the compasses, the rule, the book of constitutions.
Making sure the new leader knows his stuff.
And the lodge's charter and bylaws, everything's got a meaning, a lesson attached to it. Then they do the same thing for the other officers, the wardens, the treasurer, secretary, chaplain, all the way down to the tiler.
It's like a crash course in lodge management. And what about those public processions they do, like when a new lodge gets set up?
Those are quite the spectacle. The monitor lays out the order. The tiler with his sword leads the way, followed by musicians. Then the stewards with their white rods. Then the master masons. Then the deacons with their black rods. Then comes the secretary and treasurer, the wardens, the past masters. It's a whole hierarchy on display.
Showing off their Masonic pride.
Exactly. And they even include members from those higher degrees, like the Royal Archmasons and the Knights Templar. The Orator and the Chaplain are in there too, plus a guy carrying the holy writings. And finally, the Worshipful Master brings up the rear. It's a whole Masonic parade.
Pretty impressive. And they have these special ceremonies too, right? Like when they lay a cornerstone.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. It's not just about bricks and mortar. The Grand Master gets involved, using the trowel, the square, the level, and the plumb to make sure that foundation stone is laid properly. It's symbolic, showing they're building on a solid foundation.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
And get this, they put corn, wine, and oil on the cornerstone too. Corn for prosperity, wine for joy, and oil for peace.
So it's not just a building, it's a statement about their values.
Exactly. They even have a ceremony for dedicating a new lodge building called the consecration of a subordinate lodge. It's like a housewarming party, but Masonic style.
So first they create the lodge, then they consecrate the building.
Right. The Grand Master sprinkles corn, wine, and oil on the lodge room itself this time. Corn for Freemasonry, wine for virtue, oil for benevolence. They really like their symbolism.
They do. It's like a baptism for the building.
Yeah.
And they don't forget their brothers even in death, do they? The Monitor has a whole section on Masonic funerals.
Yep, it's all about honoring the departed brother. They have rules about who gets Masonic burial, what everyone should wear, black suits, white gloves, sprigs of evergreen.
Evergreen for remembering.
For immortality, exactly. They even drape black cloth over the Bible and the officer's jewels as a sign of mourning.
Wow, they think of everything.
And the service itself is quite detailed. Prayers, readings, hymns. They even lower the apron and a sprig of evergreen into the grave with the coffin that everyone tosses in a bit of dirt.
A final farewell. Poignant.
They wrap it up with the Lord's Prayer and a final blessing. And they even have separate rules for how to behave in processions, especially at funerals. It's all about showing respect, even in grief.
It's amazing how much thought and care they put into everything, from the first meeting to the final farewell. This Monitor really opens your eyes to what it means to be a Mason.
It does. It's not just about secrets and handshakes. It's about building a better self, helping others, living a life based on strong morals and values. It's a whole philosophy, a way of life, all hidden in plain sight.
And to think, all this is laid out in their own rule book. This Monitor might not be a grimoire, but it definitely unlocks a different kind of secret knowledge. It makes you wonder, though, with all these ceremonies, these lodges all over the world.
What are you thinking?
Well, the Freemasons are clearly involved in their communities. They're organized. They value morality and connection. Do you think they have a bigger impact on the world than we realize? Maybe not in a controlling way, but just through their values and their network.
It's certainly possible. They've been around for centuries, with members in all walks of life. Who knows what kind of influence they have behind the scenes?
Makes you think, doesn't it? This official monitor has given us more than just a glimpse into Texas Freemasonry. It's given us a lot to ponder about the world around us.
Agreed. It's a fascinating primary source for anyone interested in understanding these guys.
And for all our deep divers out there, if you have any occult archive suggestions, books that have sparked your curiosity, don't hesitate to let us know.
We're always looking for new mysteries to uncover.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Texas Freemasonry, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next adventure into the unknown. Until next time, keep exploring.